not, masculinity used to be pretty popular amongst men. Well, for the last 300,000 years anyway. Men have always required masculinity. It has allowed us to be the protector, the provider, the fighter. But now, for some reason, masculine men are seen in the same light as smoking, lead paint, and House of Cards with Kevin Spacey. It was good at the time, maybe we enjoyed it for a little bit, but now we know too much. Ladies and gentlemen, masculinity is dying, and it's leaving a lot of men, young and old, lost, without a cause in the world. Every day, thousands of people shout down men who are masculine people. And this is the crazy thing about it. We are naturally masculine. That is how our sex operates. You would never shout down a woman for being feminine, would you? Most women will sit there and be proud and they love their femininity. But if a dude says the same thing, all of a sudden they're a horrible piece of shit. And that is not fair in the slightest. In the past decade, maybe over the past 2 decades, we have seen a steep decline in the levels of masculinity within the male population of the Western world. We are seeing men become, on average, more agreeable, less driven, more likely to give up, unmotivated, fatter, sadder, and for some reason, masculinity is now a dirty word. We are in the midst of an epidemic of weak men, and the outcome may be horrifying. And let me just clarify all this. All those things about being a protector and bravery and all that shit, it doesn't mean women can't do it. But on average, men are built to do that. That's why we're bigger, we're stronger, faster, all that shit, more aggressive, so that we can be the ones who do the shit jobs, right? The ones that put their bodies on the line. That is always and has always been men, and it should continue that way. We're built for it. And it's not just the physicality of male beings that shows us that, you know, this is built into us. It's also the structure of our DNA. It is different. We are different to females to the point where a study that was conducted showed that if you are a man who has a traumatic brain injury, you are more likely to reach certain levels of recovery in comparison to a female who has the same injury. And that is because men on average are more motivated. They don't take no for an answer. They want to try and reach these goals. And for some reason, when it comes to neuroplasticity and helping healing the brain, that really helps. That was a small study, right? And it doesn't mean it's hard science, but it's certainly very interesting. Right now, today, there is not another group of people that is more hated for the color of their skin, their gender, and their sexual preference than straight white men. And I know that a lot of people hear that and they switch off straight away, but it is true. They are the only people that are allowed to be attacked and vilified in Parliament, by government officials, by people on the TV. All that shit is seen as okay. And if you do it about anybody else, you are to be destroyed. You are to be cast off into the distance from humankind itself.
What are straight white men good for?
Not a lot.
Do you think straight white men are important?
No.
We're utter fucking trash.
I think they're good for in society.
If they give them their bank card, that's pretty good.
Have that conversation right there, or ask questions about any other type of human being, and you will be attacked for racism, sexism, all that shit. Right? You'll just be attacked. But it's absolutely fine to demonize and even make careers off demonizing straight white men. Why? Because masculinity is a terrible problem, a terrible plight across humanity. And I understand where that's coming from, because people right now associate the word masculinity with the phrase toxic masculinity. To a lot of people, they mean exactly the same thing. Arrogance, violence, the inability to show any introspection, believing that they're better than everybody else and believing that they're better than women. These are examples of toxic masculinity, and they are real. Or are they? Are they just traits of really shit people? Because if a woman was to show any of those traits, would she be called toxically masculine, or would she just be called a cunt? These people aren't toxically masculine, they're just cunts. nuts. I really argue the point that masculinity is necessary, and it has always been necessary, and it will always be necessary. And in a world without it, society will be brought to its knees. However, there has been a lot of masculinity that has died out across a lot of different groups. There are a lot of young men right now that actually blame masculinity for all the problems in their lives. It's not just women.
I don't know if you will include this, but I remember boys would wait for the female teachers to walk up the stairs at school and get their phones out and film up their dresses.
Nothing is literally questioning it. I'd say almost for some boys, the only person that they aren't sexualizing would be their mum or a sister if they've got one.
I won't dwell on this video too much. It goes for a long time, but it sounds like these three young guys, all from private schools, and they just sound like they got out of the surf. Oh yeah, bro. I remember one day at school, this bloke walked up and he wanted 20 cents for the canteen. And he asked 10 people. That's toxic masculinity right there. It's a 14-minute video from a page called Teach Us Consent. And they basically talk about all the things that boys do in school that are just horrifying and terrible and bad. And a lot of them are quite bad, but you never hear, this is what's really quite strange, you never hear one of them say, well, yeah, that was one dude who did that, or two guys did that, and they're assholes and no one liked them. They just blame every single person there with the penis. They didn't even say, no, I didn't do that. It was just a couple of bad eggs. They just label everyone with that toxic masculinity because I don't even know why. I don't understand what it achieves. If someone who is a man is going to be an arsehole and you call everyone else around him toxically masculine and say they're pieces of shit, it doesn't achieve anything. It doesn't fix the problem. It just makes everyone else feel terrible.
There's only a few words I ever felt were used in my school with regards to women. It was they're hot, they're a bitch, or they're a slut, or sure, they're cool and funny.
I mean, you probably just covered all of the stereotypes at a high school just then. And maybe the ladies at the school would also label men in those ways. Oh, he's hot, he's fat, he's got pimples, he's got bacne, all that shit. That's just what people do. This is less about young men being toxically masculine and more about young people and being assholes. It's what they do best.
I wasn't the kind of guy who would go to all these parties on the weekend, but all I would hear on a Monday was in the hallways, how many people did you hook up with? Oh, I hooked up with 12. And it was a numbers game.
Shut the fuck up, nerds. What are you even complaining about? What's crazy is anyone who does actually display any masculinity or talks about masculinity is immediately labeled as someone who hates women. And that does my head in. That is madness. Take a look at this. Young male and anti-feminist. The Gen Z boys who hate women. Okay, do they? So anyone who is, this is what they're saying, young male and anti-feminist, they hate women. That's what you're suggesting? It's from Vice, so being anti-man is just given. But hang on, maybe the article's actually about real misogynists. Let's read on. Oh, hang on. Half of young men in the UK now believe that feminism has gone too far. How did it get that bad? Now that is a post that's put out to millions of people. And the title basically suggesting that young male and anti-feminists, they're the boys who hate women. And then the next line comes down and says that half of the UK's men think that feminism's gone too far. So that means that they're anti-feminists, which must mean they hate women. You're born a man, you turn out to be a little bit masculine, you question feminism, and then all of a sudden you hate women and next Christmas you're a neo-Nazi. What the fuck? And no wonder young boys are starting to see masculinity as evil. And I think that one of the problems with all of this is every group, every gender, every everything has a movement behind them. There's the Me Too movement for women. There's the Black Lives Matter movement for black people. But anyone who seems to want to support men, think Jordan Peterson, right? They just get attacked. That's just what you do. You just attack them. Even Andrew Tate, right? We all know he's a bit of a dickhead and he might have done some really dodgy stuff. But people don't even focus on that. They're not even focusing on the sex trafficking allegations. They're focusing on the fact that he tries to help masculine men. Even if he's doing it wrong. That's the worst thing about him, not the sex trafficking. Come on! There's Joe Rogan as well. There's a lot of other different people and that's very, very good. But anyone who doesn't attack men is seen as a men's rights activist that hates women, and that is awful. Something needs to be done, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sick of seeing young men kill themselves. Every day in Australia, there are 9 people that kill themselves and 7 of them are men. You're telling me that there's a problem with men hurting others? No, they're hurting themselves. And you could say that toxic masculinity causes a lot of those deaths, and maybe it does a few. But I would also like to suggest that when you tell someone at a very young age that they are the problem, that they're not allowed to be themselves, that they can't enjoy life, as long as they're not hurting anyone else, they can't enjoy life as the way that they were built, the way that they were structured, and the way that their brain was wired. When you tell people that, and you let them grow up thinking that everything they do is wrong, and they are harmful, and they are the devil, and all that type of shit, no wonder they end up sad, alone, and often dead. We shouldn't break the souls of young men. We should pressure them into being great. And I know some people will say, hey, you've had enough time. Men have been this for that, man, all that shit. Ladies, shut the fuck up, all right? This isn't about you for once. Masculinity can be great. It's a tool. If it's used properly, it's wonderful. If it's misused, it's shit. Men are weaker today than ever before. All right, their minds are weaker, but it's also physically. Men today can't bench press, can't squat, can't deadlift as much as the men 30, 40 years ago. That has been proven in studies. So men aren't doing as much. They're not going out and doing as much. They're not living that masculine life that for someone who has testosterone pumping through their veins is not only required, is not only helpful, but it is necessary for a happy life. We're not being told to train our body, to provide for our family, to be willing to fight to the death, to protect those that we love. We're not being taught that anymore. So men are lost. We don't have the role models we once did. Modern fathers are walking on eggshells, terrified about losing their jobs if they say anything. And if you don't have a father, then you're fucked as well. More people without fathers end up in jail, end up homeless, end up mentally ill. It is a witch hunt against men. And the vast majority of us have done nothing wrong. That's what's fucked about it. School can be blamed as well. These young men are growing up in very feminine environments. Teachers, they're all women. This curriculum is written by women. And because of this, we see the vast majority of successful students from primary school, high school, and university, they're all women. It's designed for them. And that's marvelous for them. But what about us fucking idiots? Let me say this to finish this video. Weak men are dangerous. Look at all the school shooters. They're all weak pieces of shit. That's the truth. You don't have to be this alpha, right? You don't have to be a fucking alpha, but lead from the front. Bring up those around you. And I can't believe I have to say this, but obviously hating women is not masculine. It's shit, and if you do it, fuck you to the moon. We as men are standing still in this world, like stagnant water in the footsteps of progress. We need to work harder. And here are some things that you can do today. Get to the gym, push your body, grow, work hard on something. Put yourself in bad situations and learn how to deal with them. Whether it's a sauna, an ice bath, or running, whatever. Something that sucks. Learn how to deal with it. Find a hobby that's not drinking or gambling and really put some time into it. Talk to old blokes. Learn from people around you. Catch up with your mates. Have a couple of beers, but prioritize your family. They are more important than those blokes. You can be a great masculine version of yourself that is nothing close to toxic masculinity. I believe every man can do that. And if you fail, keep trying. Keep fucking trying like your life depends on it. Because for a lot of us, it does. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time.